Imagine this. You've gone 3 days without food. Your children haven't eaten either. Across the valley, a deer is grazing, completely unaware. You have one spear, one chance. If you miss, you don't just lose dinner. You lose the only shot your family had today. For almost 300,000 years, this was one of the most dangerous moments in a human life. Not the miss, the distance. To kill, you had to get close. Close enough to be seen. Close enough to be charged, gored, trampled if the animal turned on you first. Then someone invented something that changed the terms completely. A weapon that let a human kill without ever getting close enough to die. The bow. Hold that thought, because the story of how it was invented is stranger than you think, and it didn't start with hunting at all. Here's what almost nobody tells you. For a species with no claws, no fangs, no thick hide, the bow didn't just improve your odds, it rewrote them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some researchers consider it one of the most important inventions your species ever made. Not fire, not the wheel, this. But first, we need to go back to a cave on the coast of South Africa, because that's where the trail actually begins. Archaeologists digging through ancient sediment layers there found something strange. Tiny stone points, barely bigger than a fingernail. Too small, too light to tip a hand-thrown spear. A thrown spear needs weight behind it to do damage. These had almost none. So what were they for? Under a microscope, the points told a different story. Fracture patterns that only happen when something small hits a target at extremely high speed. Not the speed of a thrown weapon, the speed of something released under tension. These weren't spear points, they were arrowheads, and they were roughly 64,000 years old. Now hold on to that number, because it's about to get stranger. At another site nearby, archaeologists found thin, deliberately smoothed bone fragments, shaped with careful, patient work. Some still carried a dark residue on their tips. When tested, that residue matched plant-based poisons still used by hunter-gatherers in the region today. These weren't just arrows. They were poisoned arrows, built to kill something far bigger, faster, and stronger than the person holding the bow, without that person ever getting close enough to be killed in return. Sit with that for a second, because this is the part that should genuinely surprise you. One bow, held by one ordinary person, could store more killing energy than that same person's arm could ever generate on its own. A human arm, throwing as hard as it possibly can, releases its power in an instant, and most of that power is lost to distance and air resistance before it lands. A drawn bow stores that same energy slowly, silently, and releases all of it in a single, focused burst, exactly when and where the archer chooses. For the first time in the history of your species, the strongest animal in the confrontation wasn't the safest one anymore. But here's the twist nobody expects. Most people assume the bow was invented purely to hunt animals. The evidence tells a darker story. A ranged weapon doesn't just work on a deer. It works on a rival, and a small group with bows had a devastating advantage over a group without them, whether the target had 4 legs or 2. Some researchers now believe the earliest projectile weapons may have shaped conflict between human groups just as much as they shaped the hunt. That theory gets a grim confirmation at a site in modern-day Kenya called Nataruk, where archaeologists uncovered the remains of a group of people who died roughly 10,000 years ago. Their wounds are consistent with projectile weapons, not clubs, not rocks. It's one of the earliest known signs of organized violence between groups of humans, and the weapon behind it was almost certainly something shot from a distance. So this quiet piece of bent wood and taut string wasn't just feeding your ancestors. It was deciding which groups survived and which ones didn't. Let's go back to that valley for a moment. The one with the deer and the family who hadn't eaten in 3 days. Now picture it differently. Not a spear, a bow. The hunter doesn't have to sprint across open ground, exposed, praying the deer doesn't bolt before they're close enough to strike. They stay low in the grass, 100 feet back, hidden, patient, unseen. They draw the string slowly. They feel the tension build in the wood. They wait for the wind to settle. Then they release. There's no roar, no desperate final sprint, no moment where the outcome hangs on how fast a human body can move. Just a quiet snap, a thin, dark line cutting through the air, and an animal that doesn't understand what happened until it's already over. That silence is the whole revolution. A thrown spear announces itself. It demands proximity, noise, commitment, and no way to undo the failure. A bow lets you stay invisible right up until the exact moment you choose to stop being invisible. And this time, when the hunter walks back into camp, their children eat. Now here's the part that should really unsettle you. The bow let a hunter kill without ever revealing where they were standing. No noise, no proximity, no warning. An animal or an enemy could be alive 1 second and gone the next, without ever knowing which direction the threat had come from. Think about how much that changes everything. For nearly all of human history before this, violence was face to face. You saw what was coming for you, or you didn't survive to remember it. The bow introduced something new into the world. Danger that could come from nowhere, from someone you never even saw. That's not just a weapon upgrade. That's the birth of the ambush, the sniper, the invisible threat, thousands of years before any of those words existed. But we still haven't answered the real question. How do you even build one of these? Because here's something your instincts won't tell you. You cannot invent a bow by accident. You have to choose exactly the right wood, and know that it must season and dry for months before it can hold tension without snapping in your hands. You have to understand that a string pulled too tight will break, and one too loose will barely fire at all. You have to test it, watch it fail, adjust it, and try again, sometimes across an entire season, long before you know if any of it will actually work. That is not the mind of a creature simply reacting to hunger in the moment. That is the mind of a creature capable of picturing a future it hasn't lived yet, and building toward it anyway, months in advance, on nothing but faith that the plan will pay off. In a strange way, the bow might be one of the clearest fingerprints we have of something shifting inside the human brain itself. Not just tool use, foresight, patience, the ability to delay a reward by an entire season for a payoff you can't yet see or touch. And once this idea existed, it never really disappeared. It spread. It evolved. Composite bows layered from wood, horn, and sinew. Poison recipes refined across generations. Fletching added to arrows so their flight would fly true instead of tumbling off course. Every improvement building on the last, refined by people who understood physics, tension, and timing long before any of those words had been invented. And here's the part that still surprises archaeologists today. This wasn't a one-time discovery that spread neatly from one cave to the rest of the world. It was reinvented, independently, over and over, by different groups who never met each other, separated by oceans and thousands of years. Southern Africa first. Later, communities across Europe, refining bows from single pieces of wood strong enough to bring down a deer at real distance. Later still, groups across nearly every continent humans reached, each arriving at some version of the same idea, almost as if the human brain, once it crossed a certain threshold, was always going to land here eventually. That should tell you something. This wasn't luck. This wasn't one genius in one cave. This was something your species was built to eventually discover, the moment enough patience, memory, and imagination came together in one mind. Here's the twist you weren't expecting, though. The bow wasn't really the invention. The real invention was patience. A lion doesn't need to imagine next season. A wolf doesn't need to trust a plan it can't see the end of. But somewhere, in a cave on a coastline tens of thousands of years ago, someone looked at a piece of wood that wasn't useful yet, and decided to wait for it to become useful. Somebody trusted a future they hadn't seen. Every single time you set a goal today that won't pay off for months. Every time you study for a test, save money for a future you can't fully picture yet, or build something slowly instead of grabbing whatever's in front of you right now, you are running the exact same mental software that shaped a bent stick into a weapon 64,000 years ago. You are still, in a very real sense, an archer, waiting for the wind to settle before you release. So the next time you feel weak, unequipped, outmatched by something bigger, faster, stronger than you, remember this. Lions ruled with muscle. Wolves ruled with teeth. Humans ruled with an idea, a bent stick, a string, and a brain patient enough to imagine tomorrow. That's the deer across the valley. That's your family waiting to eat. That's every single one of your ancestors, drawing back a string, holding their breath, and trusting a future they couldn't yet see.